Thanks again for joining us for the Punchbowl Boys podcast. Once again, I would like to acknowledge the Darug people, who are the traditional custodians of the land this podcast was recorded. I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander people listening in today. For this extended episode of this series, Old Boys, New Boys, we were lucky enough to be joined by legendary Australian cricketer and former Punchbowl Boys high school student, Len Pascoe. Len was joined by current students Jad, Levon, Mohamed and Karim to talk everything from his past, present and future. Enjoy.
To kick things off, who's been the biggest influence during your time at Punchbowl Boys High School and how?
Look, I'm going back to 1963, 64, 65, in those mid to late 60s. And like any typical young student that comes along, you're a little bit afraid, you're a little bit scared. We're sitting on the cold concrete trying to behave ourselves with our Punchbowl Boys blazer on. And I remember the headmaster coming out, his name was Jeffries. He was a wonderful headmaster, and he come out wearing one of those academic coats that they have and a square hat, and he looked like Zorro. In fact, we used to sing it, out of the night, on a push bike comes Zorro, and he didn't know, the headmaster didn't know we were singing it under our breath. And anyway, Jeffries had a profound influence on the school. He had the cadets, the school cadets. He had them. He had different clubs set up to cater for the interests of the students, whether it's chess, art, photography, that type of thing. And he also placed the academic achievements of players, of students, equal with the sporting, so that we all had something that we could be proud of and something that we can build our esteem. So that headmaster Jeffries, Mr. Jeffries, was the first to influence. And then the next big influence after him when he left was a headmaster named Cook. And he followed on that tradition. And as students, we grew in our awareness of the school by the achievements of the pupils that were going to the school. We took pride in someone like Graham Pitty, who was the dux of the school, who later became a barrister and a very high qualified QC. Those early days of the school were very, very important. And the teachers along the way, Mr. McCann in our English class, or Mr. Haig in our maths class, or Mr. Robson. But one that stuck in my mind was Mr. Clark. Now, Mr. Clark was in charge of the cricket team, and he was also the music master, music teacher. And I was in his class in music, and I never understood the crotchets and quavers, which... I should have taken more notice of Mr. Clark, because later I was to be involved in the music industry. But back then he was our cricket coach. So here we are in the nets, and I'm bowling, and I took a wicket, and I jumped up in the air. "Oh, how'd you like that, fans?" And Mr. Clark called me over. He put me up my hand, and he went whack with a ruler, and he said, "None of us are your fans. Get that straight." Now, that's funny, because years later I was to have a lot of fans. But those days at Punchbowl Boys High, Mr. Clark taught me humility and not to gloat on your successes. But unfortunately, he did nothing for my crotchets and quavers in the music reading department.
From your time at Punchbowl Boys High School?
Oh, look, I think... the students, I sat next to Gary Manuel. He went on to play World Cup soccer for Australia. Then when he left school, I was sitting next to Jeff Thompson, and that's when we formed our partnership here at Punchbowl Boys High, and we went from here to Lords, and we were opening the bowling together at Lords. So 2 pupils from Punchbowl Boys High. In fact, I joke about it, saying that in the final year, Jeff Thompson's parents attended more than he did, because he was too busy with a pair of flippers and a beach towel off on his way to Maroubra at the railway station while we were going to school. And the next day we'd see his parents, and then behind, 2 metres behind him, behind them was Jeff trying to explain where he was that day. But I think the pupils made a lot of great friends later on. The fellow that I played soccer with become my solicitor. He went on to do law, and Kenny Scully. And the other day it was really good to run into a fellow called Johnny Hargraves. He played soccer here, and I was up at the Sanctuary Cove up on the golf course doing a sports lunch, and I run into him. And to this day, when I do functions, there's always seems to be someone in the audience that's gone to Punchbowl Boys High.
Can you please tell us how you got started in cricket and who's been your biggest influence?
I think you start off in cricket by just playing in the backyard with your friends. Any sport, whether it's football or cricket or soccer. And in the summertime, we played cricket. In the wintertime, we played soccer and rugby league in the backyard. My first cricket bat was a fence paling, which we cut a handle and put some tape around the handle. My first boots, when I think about it, all I had was 6 studs on the boot, 4 at the front, 2 at the back. My feet used to be about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. That was that hot because the sole was so thin. But I was only thinking the other day, we used to have these running, have the athletics carnival here at Punchbowl Boys. And I could jump pretty good. I could jump, I was in the high jumps. And I could also run the 100 metres pretty good. The guy down the road from me, he was a shoemaker, and he said, if you're going to be a runner, you need a pair of shoes like this. So he gave me a pair of running spikes. And I thought, well, how fast am I going to be when I get into the Punchbowl Boys final? And there was a guy named Griffiths. And he was a kind of a nerdy sort of guy. He was very good at maths, and he was very academic. And this bloke, I'll wipe him off the paddock. Anyway, I think I finished 5th. When I took off, my studs stuck in the ground. I couldn't get out. And Griffiths ended up winning, and he went to the CHS. And so you never know the person at school, maybe the nerdy one, but his interests were not yours. And but that's in cricket. In the backyard, you come to school, you get graded. In fact, Jeff Thompson, the world's fastest bowler to this day, was not graded when he come to his first year at Punchbowl Boys High School. He was playing house cricket, and I was playing in the Punchbowl team, and with opening the bowling with a fella called Mickey Maud. But Tomo, he broke too many arms and fingers and legs and whatever down in house cricket, and they decided that they're going to bring him up. So in the next year, I was opening the bowling with Jeff Thompson in our cricket team, and our wicket keeper was in fact Gary Manuel, the fellow that had played soccer for Australia. So that was the trio, and of course that went up to 6th form like that. And then after that, we were playing for Bankstown in grade cricket, and we were recognised there and played New South Wales, and eventually you play for Australia. That was the stepping stones.
Did you play in the same team?
Yes, we did. Oh, yeah. Tomo has always been a very, very good friend of mine to this day. I was talking to him again last night, and that friendship started from Punchbowl Boys High. He lived over at Connell Park. I lived over at Greenacre, and we ended up soccer together. And there was a famous match. There was a famous match at Punchbowl Boys when Punchbowl Boys played Birong High School in sixth form. And Tomo took 9 for 3.
Wow.
9 wickets for 3 runs. I was bowling at the other end, and in order to let Jeff get his 10th wicket, I bowled one wide down leg side. Unfortunately, the Birong batsman was so scared, he was running towards square leg. On his way, it bounced off his pads and bowled himself. And I got the 10th wicket. I think I got 1 for 4. I got slogged around, and Tomo got 9 for 3. Yeah, that's a piece of legend at Punchbowl Boys High, that game.
It was really great to hear off air about the live shows that you're producing around New South Wales. For our audience that might not know, can you please tell us about these shows and how you got into it?
Yeah, when we were talking earlier about it, I've got an insatiable appetite to learn. I just got to learn. I can't stop learning. I want to know. I used to grow up and I'd open up a watch to see how it worked. And unfortunately, I never could put it back together again. But that was the inquisitive mind that I had. And that inquisitiveness was the one thing that drove me into the entertainment world. I've got to admit, as a cricketer, I was a big fan of World Championship Wrestling. And I grew up in the days of Mario Milano and Haystacks, anyway, all those. Then later on the WWE. So my bowling, it sort of took on that because I had that interest. And my theory was that if it was boring to me, it was boring who were watching it. But I was given the opportunity to become community arts officer for Bankstown Council. And for 4 years, I was in charge of the Theatrical Society, the Movie Club, the Lapidary Club, the Art Society. There was the pottery. There was a whole stack of... And that introduced me into the world of arts. And I took a real passion for it. And then I did quite a few jobs, but 30 years ago, I started up Pascoe Sports Entertainment, where I married sporting speakers with entertainers because I recognised that a lot of sporting clubs needed to raise funds and they're having social, and there was nobody really tying all that together. And then when websites, I had one of the original websites when it come through, that tied everything together. It became the catalyst. And then from that, I did a few gigs where the sound wasn't very good, and the comedians would say to me, "You don't have a show unless you've got light and sound. You've got to get good quality light and sound, otherwise no show." And so I thought, well, the only way I'm going to get good quality sound is to learn sound engineering. So I put together my own outfits. I asked questions, and then as the technological world took over, I noticed that we weren't using CD for backing music anymore. We weren't using mini discs. We were using iPads and MacBook Pros, and so I started to learn desktop publishing, and I started to learn movie editing, audio engineering, all this sort of stuff. I just kept on learning, and along the way, other performers knew that I was serious about taking care of them, and they wanted to work with me because they were going to get quality equipment. They're going to be treated, with respect, and not to interfere with their performances, but to give them good feedback as to where they could go and look, take up opportunity. Different from cricket coaching. I've been coaching since 1975. I coached the two War brothers that come not far from here. I coached Glenn McGrath. I've even had a little bit to do with the current Steve Smith coach. Unfortunately, he didn't listen to me well enough. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say is, if anyone's listening to this, if you've got to just keep on learning, keep on educating, and be inquisitive, ask questions, and along the way you'll develop skills, and those skills will put you on a path. And I often say, the people, the signposts in the road are the people in your life. And the people, you come along and there's a signpost there, and that person will direct you another way, and there'll be another signpost. I've been very lucky in that in the entertainment world. I've got performers like Pascoe, who was one of the original band members of the Atlantics, and he does a fantastic Johnny Cash show. I got a fellow who's one of the top singers in New Zealand, Brian Lawrence Bates, who does Roy Orbison. So I thought, wow, I've got to put these two blokes together. They didn't know each other. I'll put them together because I thought this is going to work. And it happens. And now I'm doing shows with them. I've been an MD for an Elvis Presley act. And the CC's ads that you see on TV, that's the Elvis that I worked with for 14 years. And he taught me stagecraft. And the more I worked with these entertainers, the more I was to develop my public speaking, so that I started to develop a skill in getting up on the microphone and talking to people and making it interesting, and the techniques they use. So as I said, here I am, I'm 71 years of age, and my mind is still like a sponge for education.
Before you got your start in cricket, what kind of jobs did you have?
Oh, everything. My father was a brick carter, and he used to say to me, son, every time I give him my report card, school, but unfortunately there's something wrong. I just couldn't get the results for the effort that I was putting in, and rather than getting dejected about it, I just kept trying harder. And I suppose that's why I went on to play for Australia. I never took rejection. I always wanted to be better. Anyway, my dad, he looked at my report card and he said, I think there's a future of brick carting for you, son. And I thought, oh, God, the better I got at cricket, the less I had to go brick carting. And anyway, I just look at that as a milestone in my life, because it's not easy to put 2,000 bricks by hand on a truck, take them off the truck and do 4 loads a day in hot, weather, cold weather. It taught me the disciplines, and it gave me the physical strength. So I did that. I remember I lasted 1 day as a sewing machine mechanic. Could you imagine being at Bankstown Square, and I'm out the front of this sewing machine shop, and I'm running, stuff through the material through a sewing machine. I lasted 3 days in that job, and it was a long weekend. I remember the owner, he came up to me and he said, I don't think you're going to make it. I said, but thanks, that's the best 3 days that you're ever going to have in the sewing machine mechanic. So I didn't do that. I worked in the hospitality industry. After I retired, I wanted to raise my family, and I wanted to be at home. I didn't want to be travelling around the world, and I became a furniture consultant. And I would do fit-outs of clubs and large seating areas, restaurants. So I'd do everything from floor layout to colour selection of curtains and types of chairs. And I'd be negotiating, 1,000 chairs. So I learnt negotiation skills. I learnt interior design. Once again, it's part of the learning process in the hospitality industry, and understanding what marketing was all about. I worked as a gyp rocker, as an assistant gyp rocker. I ended up with a sore neck, keeping those big plaster panels up the top and the ceiling. I did that. So I become a jack of all trades. I can bricklay. I can be a carpenter. A really bush mechanic when it comes to plumbing. I don't want to touch electricity, but I have put a PowerPoint in. But paving, as I said, I just had to experience as much as I possibly can, growing up. Some people know what they want to be when they're 17, 18, and they become heart surgeons or whatever But in my case, I really didn't know what I wanted to be. But all I knew was that I wanted to just keep on experiencing and learning. And this is a real good piece of advice for people listening to this. I asked myself at 25 years of age, because I honestly believe everybody is born with a gift. Everybody. The big fella up top, he gives us a gift. And you've got a choice. You can abuse that gift, or you can use that gift. And the challenge you have as young people is to try and recognise, what is that gift? What is that gift that I've been given, and how can I use it? 35 years of age, I asked myself, what do I want out of life? I said, okay, I want to get married. I want to have 2 kids, a boy and a girl. I want to have a house. I don't want a mortgage. I want a holiday house. I don't want a mortgage. I want to get up in the morning and not have to worry about, I've got to be at such and such, every day, 5 days catching a train. It's good for some people, but for me, it wasn't it. And I thought, well, okay, if all these things I want, how am I going to achieve them? Then I realised that the only way I was going to get that was through my sport and the ability to bowl fast. So now the batsman was no longer someone who I didn't care about. The batsman was no longer someone who I hated. The batsman was now someone who was stopping me from everything I wanted out of life. So if you come into bat and I'm bowling to you, you're the one that's stopping me from my house and the mortgage. And that was when things changed. At 25, I played for New South Wales. Mind you, I was picked to play for New South Wales when I was 19. And I went surfing for 4 or 5 years. They couldn't find me because I didn't want the spotlight on me. Because you've got to remember, back in those days, I was the first non-Anglo-Saxon official cricketer to play for Australia. Now, you think about that. There was no Kaspavitzes and Labuschankes, and there was none of that. Australia was very much an Anglo-Saxon cricket team. Suddenly, I've come in, said, what are you doing? You should be playing soccer, not cricket. So I broke the ceiling. I was the first to go into this new world, and I opened the door for a lot. And it's amazing how many people I get come up to me now who are from Italian or Greek or Lebanese, and they would say, you are the person we wanted to be like in the backyard because you represented us. And when I went here, there was an element of bullying by certain students, and it was difficult as a young person. But I say to myself now, those people that bullied me all those years ago, where's your baggy green? What have you done for Australia? In my case, I have a huge amount of respect for our Indigenous community, because at Bankstown we had a couple of Indigenous cricketers, and they had a profound effect on me of the way they approach the game and their attitudes and things like that. And I've had this, and ironically, I was to marry a lady that was from Indigenous background. Her father come from the Aboriginal community up around the Gosford area, up around Patonga. And her side of the family is a descendant from the First Fleet. So here I find myself in this unique situation, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that my kids have got Macedonian, Scottish, Greek, Vlasi, which is the oldest living tribe of Europe, English. You know, my kids are incredibly genetically diverse, and they've got the most wonderful personalities. And I think back on those days at Punchbowl Boys High, on those fellas that had the, they wanted to put you down. And as I said, where's your baggy green? Most recently, I've been involved in the first Australian cricket team, and in fact the first Australian team ever to represent Australia, the 1868 Aboriginal team that went to England. And there's been a song that I've been instrumental in writing with a fellow called Peter Scullion to celebrate that first Australian cricket team. So, when I look back, and I'm 71 now, and you say, what is the influence that this school has had on my life? It's been profound. From that initial day when we sat on that cold concrete floor to watch Zorro, the headmaster, come in, to 6 years later, I've got to say I enjoyed my time at Punchbowl Boys High, and I've still got many good friends from those early days at school. So that's been my legacy, so to speak, and I'm proud of the fact that I was almost a prefect at the school. I was only 1 or 2 out from being a prefect. But hey, hang on a minute, those prefects haven't got a house named after them.
Have you had any major injuries playing cricket? If so, what were they?
Look, I've had no more injuries than the guy who's a plumber or drainer or a brick carter. You're going to get sore backs, sore legs, sore muscles. The important thing is that you stay flexible, you train well. What you're tipping into is preparation. Preparation if you have an injury, preparation to prevent an injury. To me, preparation is incredible. When I was playing for New South Wales, Bobby Simpson, the then coach, come up to me and he said, "You're not going to be 12th man when the West Indian fast bowler Andy Roberts comes to bowl for us. You're not going to be 12th man." I thought, oh, right, okay. So I'm going to be opening the bowling with Andy Roberts, the great West Indian fast bowler. First match comes on. What happens? I'm 12th man. They lied to me. So what was I going to do? Was I going to get a chip on my shoulder? No. Everywhere Andy Roberts went, I was like a shadow. I was this far away. I was watching the ball in his hand, the way he's worked his wrist, his attitude, his facial, every mannerism. I was his shadow. The same year I was made 12th man for Andy Roberts for New South Wales was the same year I opened the bowling at Lord's in the Jubilee Test. If I hadn't had the right attitude when the opportunity came up, I wasn't prepared to take it. And when I was at Bankstown in the Green Shield in the under-16s, every time they announced the team, I was the 17th man, I was the 18th man, I was the 19th man. I would walk 4 or 5 kilometres My parents didn't give me any money. I had to go and find bottles where I could get a deposit on the bottle of, it was 5 cents or threepence or whatever it was, at the sixpence or whatever. It was enough to buy a choo-choo bar and a can of Tarex. And that lasted me the whole day. The only game I played for Bankstown in the Green Shield was the final. And I took 6 wickets in the first, another 5 in the second. And if I hadn't kept training and believing I was in the team, that when the opportunity came up in that grand final, I wouldn't have taken 11 wickets. And that's been the story, if out there, the message out there, that if things are not going your way, keep working and working at it, because when the opportunity comes, you want to be able to grab it with both hands. And that's the difference between failure and success.
And finally, what does your future hold?
What my future holds? That's a very good question. I love the technological world and where technology is taking us. I love the electronic gadgets. I was only at the Apple store yesterday and I'm kicking tyres out there, and I'm looking at the, I'm making decisions. Will I buy a Mac Mini and research it? No, don't get one with 8 gig of RAM. And no, I want the 16 gig and I want at least 516 SSD. So I'm talking in a language that most people don't understand. And then I look at the iPads and I sum up the iPad. Is this iPad new one any better than the one that I've got? And then I have a look at the iPhone. I say, but I love the world that technology is taking us. And I just like those days when I used to pull the watch apart and couldn't get together. Sometimes I do things on the computer that will upset something, and then I've got to work it out. And then I feel a sense of elation. It doesn't matter that I wrecked it in the first place. The fact is that I fixed it. But so tomorrow, what I'll be doing is in the garage, I'm going to set up my Bose LM1 Mark II speakers, the big sticks, and then I'm going to set up my mixing desk, and I'm going to set up all the attachments that I need, my MacBooks, all of it, all my lighting and everything. I'm going to have it all ready, just the same as when I used to have my cricket kit. Make sure that I had 2 pairs of boots, make sure I had my laces, make sure I have my shirt, your jock straps, you protect everything. I do the same thing. So when I turn up at the gig, that goes there, that goes there, that goes there, everything. Okay, I'm not short a long lead for the guitarist. There it is here. You see what I mean? So the future for me is preparation, and from a health side, I think the attitude that I got has helped me through some very, very difficult health periods. 3 years ago, I ended up with cryptococcal meningitis gatti. 6 weeks in hospital I was. And people die from that. And they told me the only reason that I was able to survive it is because I wasn't a drinker or a smoker. A year later, I'm not feeling too good. Triple heart bypass with a valve replacement. I spent 2 weeks in the intensive care unit, and what am I looking forward to, or what am I looking at? Number one, take care of your health. Take care of your health. Lay off the substances. Watch your diet. Be careful of diabetes, make sure your blood pressure's right, keep your weight under control, eat properly, keep the machine well conditioned like you do your equipment. And to me, right, I want to be around for my grandkids. So health plays a big part. My family plays a big part. I taught my granddaughter how to fish. She's 4 years old, and I put it on Facebook, her first cast. And she's got a cast on her fair dinkum. Me, she could be a really good fast bowler the way she cast. She nearly took me with her. And then she's got her first brim. And to me, it's the family. It's keeping your health. And then I've got a sense of responsibility of the people that I work with, the entertainers. They've got issues in their lives. It could, I'm going through one at the moment where one of the entertainers, his wife has had a stroke, and not in a very good way. I've had entertainers that have died of myeloma cancer. I've had entertainers that have died of bowel cancer. I've had the fellow that wrote Ginger Meggs, he had motor neurone disease. So the future to me is a responsibility for the people in my life to try, be a support for them whichever way I can. To be out there in the community as much as possible through charity events and fundraising and things like that. To do my entertainment shows. And in the entertainment shows, I'm not as concerned about the money as I'm concerned that the people who come to my show, they're going to forget about whatever's happening in their lives. And for that 2 hours they're with us, they're going to walk out that room with a smile on their face, and I've let them forget about it. So that's what the future is for me. To have a healthy life and to pay back the people who were on my side when I played, to give back to them, because now it's my turn to give back to them.
Thank you again for joining us for this extended episode of the series Old Boys, New Boys. And a special shout out to Len Pascoe for giving up your time to share your experiences with our students, staff, and audience. Please keep tuning in for more exciting episodes of the Punchbowl Boys podcast. Later.